Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to More Books, Cannabear, Fibre Oats, Bogey, Michael Kahn, Rob H, Ben White, Maximum Gravy, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, excuse me, Will Brax, Mel B. Styles, Troy Shuker, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Muted, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
It gets laborious though, pointed out every time. Like I guarantee tomorrow he'll go and put up the same thing, to someone else.
Right, but these are the same people that think law is spelled with an M, an O, an R, a C. These are the people that think a three-letter word that's spelled with a specific consonant is spelled with vowels and consonants in other times, which doesn't make any sense.
What are you guys talking about?
One of the guys posted a meme, right? So I was asking him for what he got, his evidence. And so he posts up a meme. It's an ad hom. It's a dig at us, right? So Ireland called him out and was like, "What papers have you done?" He's like, "Oh, nothing." Oh, so then what the fuck is your meme about, man?
Why you guys get entangled in this crap?
Well, he had to come up with something to reify his fairy tale.
Listen, even yesterday with what's his face, Don Gio, these guys congregate together over there, and I know you know. All they do is talk about the ether, and all they do is talk about dielectric acceleration. And then when they feel brave, they come here, but they come drunk.
Yeah, that was stupid,
Don't be
man.
hard on him, man.
What's that, John?
So don't be hard on him, Neil. He seemed like a nice enough guy. He's just drunk.
No,
He might
but
have
he
needed to be drunk to have the confidence to do it, to come in and start talking about stuff that is forbidden here, right? That maybe needs a few drinks, so fair enough.
Agreed, but I get a little defensive when they start telling you to shut up and why don't you be quiet. He had a lot of balls yesterday. He had them beer muscles.
Yeah, well, before that, we had an hour and a half of solid discussion with him. And then at the point that he became obnoxious, I started swearing, and then, that's the point that he got removed from the conversation permanently. But prior to that, admittedly, I stuck him on mute a couple of times just to give him fair warning, and he still carried on. So, that was just down to being drunk, though. So at that point, you're like, okay, well, you can't participate because what you're saying is I want to learn, I want to advance my understanding of this stuff. But by the same token, when it's like, okay, well, your understanding is wrong in this regard, that's when he starts interrupting and saying, no, I do know an experiment. It's like, okay, you're not going to help anybody at this point. So, we're better off without him at that stage.
And then there was one incident where he thought QE was agreeing with him when he wasn't, because QE, right after he said it, he goes, "That's a joke." But he was all over the place.
That the hypothesis comes from the experiment. That's what you're referring to.
I think that was it. Yes, and QE said that's a joke.
Yeah, he got it the wrong way around, but because he's got he watches the show, so he's got a reasonable understanding of it. And if he's anything like most people who come and watch the show, their eye gets drawn across to the chat and the chat skanks. Not everybody, but the type of person who's inclined to come on the show tends to get caught up in the chat skanking, and then they're not exactly paying 100% attention to what's being said. No, I try and keep it as concise and as full as I can every time we talk about the scientific method. Try and cram as much in there as I can. Doesn't necessarily mean it goes in. It's the same with me. When I was learning, it took me 10 repetitions minimum from QE about the scientific method and how it functioned before I really got it.
Well, I hope he gets the false dichotomy of how he was putting that in a false dichotomy with something that doesn't exist. I hope he gets that. I really do.
Well, that's because you're projecting the general. I hope the audience in general gets it onto him because he's being told it. But that's a relatively new thing, right? Again, because maybe it's me shying away from it because of what happened over on Globebusters, or the aftermath, I should say. Is maybe thinking, I'll cover that. But then when you come to the point of, well, no, it is actually of detriment to the community because it's being stacked up in false dichotomy. And we know that to be absolutely certain, because the people on our side come in and fight for it being juxtaposed with gravity. Not the anti-flat earthers or the globe heads. Our own side want to do it. Magic. I mean, in literal terms, magic, what they've done to make that happen.
That's the annoying part. When it's coming from our own side. I don't even consider them our own side, really. Once you're starting with that, might as well just go back over.
So
I'm still hello, mate. I'm just still buzzing me from yesterday because I was listening to all that and I really felt a moment of realization when you was talking through it, Nathan. And I wasn't getting it at first, and it just hit me what you were saying and what he was doing. And I can remember, and I've been in conversations similar to that myself, where I've been led down the road of talking about, well, gravity could. It was an awesome feeling when I realised what you was explaining. I can't get over it. Actually, it's great. So it's another, as a newcomer, it's another eye opener for me. So it was brilliant.
You keep thanking me when it was John, but there we go.
So then I guess it's a success. Okay.
it's a success in the sense that the topic was discussed. Good morning, everybody.
Correct.
And after you left the show, Nathan, Adam, and a few guys stuck around and talked, and it was that after show didn't have to go exactly that way. You could have put, so a suggestion from Adam was, maybe when a person does that, you can put them in a 5-minute cooling off session, invite them back.
What are we in kindergarten now?
Neil, are you going to let me talk?
I did do that. I put him on mute for a few minutes so he couldn't rumpus and disrupt the conversation. And I did that too. I think I did it twice. The first time he bitched about it. The second time he managed to, hold his tongue until he didn't. So I did kind of put him in timeout. That's the only timeout I know of, and I rarely use it. You'll rarely see me actually do that. Every time I do it, people immediately moan like buggery about it.
I don't care about those people. You are making a change in your ways, which is good for the overall show and to get more listeners. And in that after show, it went back to the old ways. So in the same sense, anyone could be triggered by a person like Don Gio after you give them proper warnings of, hey, while someone's talking, be quiet. And he wasn't even listening to that part, let alone the other parts. So the whole point is, if you're going to make that situation where you say you don't want to be a hypocrite because you say no cursing allowed and all this stuff, then take the higher ground, put them in as Adam, I'll let Adam say what he said, but, just in summary, you did a little bit of that. We all saw you do it yesterday. And I don't care what the naysayers say about you. It's your show. You're controlling it. And if the guy can't behave and if he's going to be that way, then you just say, okay, come back tomorrow and end it. Instead of allowing it to trigger you and get you cursing and doing all that stuff again.
Okay,
So
good
it's like,
advice. No, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it on board.
yeah, I mean, that's all I saw on it. But content-wise, that's fantastic.
Yeah, once it
Adam
got to the
added
point that I'm
something.
swearing at him profusely, it obviously loses its grit. But by the same token, prior to that, there was a good solid hour and a half of good discussion. And again, like we said before, if it takes somebody like that to have a couple of drinks because it's like taboo, forbidden, you might get it in the neck, well, you know, I'm always going to say after the fact, even if it's not to them directly, that I'm grateful for that. Same goes for the fundies. You know, we don't get the opportunity to talk about Coriolis effect unless someone comes in and says, of course Earth turns underneath and the atmosphere moves with it.
Them beer muscles will get you going.
But, you know, Adam pointed out real eloquently that even the incoherent dielectric acceleration that does exist does not have a vector. A vector can be created in it, but it's always towards less potential, and that's not just down. You know?
Yeah, he said it builds up charge and then it goes in all directions, discharged to its lowest potential, the shortest route.
Does it not
Because-
have polarity? I only know this because I've been watching videos on subwoofers and charging the magnets recently.
Well, he said electrostatic is static. So it's in all directions. The minute it finds, once it builds up a charge, it's got to go somewhere. And if it's static until that point, then it can go in any direction. That was just the shortest route.
Right, but the discharge itself can go in any direction as well. It can go up, sideways. I mean, if you ever watch lightning, it goes every which way.
Yeah, but he also said he was excluding freaking gases. Not him, the other guy that came in. He was pushing for a downward vector, and when Nathan brought up the helium balloon, he was trying to exclude gases.
I think the other guy was just kind of trolling the point. I don't think, was he actually arguing for?
No, that's the dielectric acceleration group, bro. I'm telling you.
I don't think the second guy was arguing for it. I think he was just trying to articulate their actual claim.
What's the guy's name? Die Slow, right?
Yeah, Die Slow's definitely one of them, as you put it.
He's one of the Ken Wheeler guys.
Sorry to be disagreeable, John.
Oh, no, okay. I was thinking the guy after Die Slow. I'm sorry.
It's only because he's been in before and you know, tried to punt a similar rhetoric that I know he's one of them, if you want to just one of them. He's one of them.
One of them. He's one of them magnet playing guys.
Okay, I've got a slide up from is this from you, Mitch? Hello, by the way.
Hey guys, how are you?
This be true? What's this?
It's a R claim. Claim of a radius. Might go through it on your show if you haven't got anything else to plan to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the first slide up. Did you want to go through it now?
Yeah, sure. All right, so this be true. From our good friend Flat Earth Wally, immediately beat the question of a sphere, but starting off with the assumption that these elevation angles that he's measuring, him and Wolfie, are on a globe. Notice the 90-degree angle. Notice the elevation angles. This is to the moon, by the way. Their previous attempt measurement was with stars. Now this is with the moon. Slide 2. They're saying it doesn't work on a flat Earth because the elevation angles will give us a different height. Slide 3. I'm going to go at 10th man. Hey, 10th man, how are you, mate? With the sextant, he's showing that you absolutely need a horizontal plane. It's got the little picture of 10th man in the sextant there. Showing that you need that flat Earth horizontal plane to measure the elevation angles. Slide 4. This is where it goes off into fancy land. He's saying that Sydney and Brisbane have 2 different horizontal planes, so it must be on a sphere. And slide 5 is the R claim. So he's got a measured claim of, what was it, 6.27 degrees different between the 2 zeniths, coming out at, what was it, 3950 miles, 3950 miles, with an error of 0.25%. So not 3959 miles. So there is an error. So the R claim is in fact a false claim. Even though it goes through all the begging the question, he's living in his own fantasy land of the sphere, he thinks there's divergent zeniths, he's measuring elevation angles with a flat earth plane, he still doesn't get the value of 3959 miles, thus debunking his own radius claim.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. Just start on the first slide. You did point this out when you went through it. So on the first slide, this be true. It's got GP below, is that the moon? And then this is done on Earth. It's got a 90-degree box marked at a point where a straight line meets a curve at the GP. Further to that, at the point that presumably you're measuring this angle from, is that what these telescope-looking things are?
Yeah, telescopes, yep. Calls them uber sextants.
Right. Well, with that measurement that they're taking from a sphere surface, this is our entire argument, by the way, there is no line that's straight between the GP and the measurement point. They haven't got a straight, flat baseline to measure this as an angle. And they haven't got 90 degrees at the GP. So on a flat plane, they're saying, for whatever reason, that this isn't possible in the next slide. But this does actually have a 90 degree that functions and can give you an angle to the moon. So you can actually measure this angle on a flat plane. It is possible to get this measurement that they've done if the plane they take it on is flat. In fact, it can only be done on a plane. So just to go back to the hangout, this is a measurement to the GP of the sun with a 90-degree box and a flat baseline. It must be, because that's what an angle is. That's what your angle is when you measure it against the elevation of the ground, your elevation angle. Flat baseline must be to get a 90-degree below the GP of the star. You must have a flat plane to do that. So back to their slide where they start off by drawing out a GP below a sphere Earth with a 90-degree box marked. This isn't 90 degrees, lads. This isn't possible on a sphere, lads. Further to that, you haven't got an angle between the measurement point and the GP. You haven't got a flat line to get an angle from. So first hurdle, you can't even measure an angle on a sphere surface. So step 1 for you to make this function is to measure the angle off a flat plane. Anything you say further to that is irrelevant, because you're not measuring it based on the fact that you've got a curve beneath your feet. You're measuring it based on the fact that you've got a flat surface beneath your feet, because you can only measure it that way. So this falls at the first hurdle, just like McToon failed at the first hurdle. You cannot get an elevation angle from a curved surface. You can't get this measurement if your baseline is bent. You must have a flat plane to get a flat baseline and 90 degrees at the GP of anything. Moon, star, sun, doesn't matter. You've got to have a flat plane to measure this angle. It isn't an angle if it's done on a curve. So further to that, this surplus extra stuff where they try and justify how the angles they've taken, utilising horizontal plane measurement acquisition, is irrelevant also. They've got Dingleberry Earth below, GPs that are marked out at 90 degrees, and they've got a curve meeting them. This is all nonsense. None of it works. Functionally, it's complete nonsense. However, in the first instance, getting an angle requires a flat plane, exactly as they've depicted, even though the slide is describing how it can't work on a plane when it's the only way you can get an angle. I'm done. Anybody else?
I don't get it, because even in their drawings and nonsense, they can't see that. I mean, come on.
Yes, they can. And they admit to it 3 slides later when they talk about Sydney's
Yeah.
plane and Brisbane's plane. And they say that they're not the same plane. But when did you leave that plane? You know? But they're not getting what they're saying. They're not understanding it. They're just repeating the rhetoric that they've been told. And I don't think they comprehend what they're saying.
Right. Benjamin, did you put these slides up 10th?
Yeah, before you go to it, let me say something. Their argument, the one, hey Mitchell, the one that they got my channel logo on, saying this is a dig at 10th Man. No, this is a dig at celestial navigation. 10th Man has nothing to do with citations and references that I've put up. It's all from the heliocentric side of the argument. And now we can go to these slides, the first one showing where the actual measurement is being drawn from. The center of a presupposed globe that's cut in half, that you can get an angle because it's a equatorial plane. It's never achieved from the surface. The second slide shows it, the second half that's not an issue, transparent, and they got the guy in the middle down there. Okay, so now this can be seen 2 ways. That could be the celestial sphere, and the guy could be representing Earth at the center and just showing the disk of the equatorial plane and the guy on it without the actual Earth around it. The last one shows you precisely Earth's center is where they get the angle, and there's your baseline. It's never coming off the surface. This is an argument against celestial navigation, not us.
Meanwhile, celestial navigation does measure its angle at the surface off a flat plane and then utilises the GP to that flat baseline. So in other words, you're navigating and measuring the Earth as flat if you're performing celestial navigation. If you want to describe it on an equatorial plane, what you'll describe is a big flat circular, if you will, disc that's flat to get the angle out to the stars. Now in some instances they'll draw a globe around the guy making the measurement. Like that somehow infers that the globe is of any use in terms of this measurement along a flat baseline, where the GP would be below and on that line. And that's the surface. That's what you're measuring. That's what you're doing the angle to, the surface. Now they say, oh no, it's to the GP that's going to be measured out after the fact, but you don't have to make any of those adjustments if you're doing celestial navigation. You just measure to the point on a flat plane. That's all you do. No sphericity is required, and if you depict it in this way, these positions on the sphere are a perspective representation of how you would see something further away from you from your vantage point. This is your observer view of these positions in the sky. But how you're measuring them is across 2 flat planes, if you will. One in the sky, one on the ground. And the measuring lines down to them. Now those distances that you get are only relevant to a flat plane also. So when you move along those lines to get to any particular location after you've figured out where the hell you are, they're relevant to a plane also. So your navigation is using and measuring a flat plane. There are 2 ways about it. So as 10th Man says when they say, oh, 10th Man, I've got an issue with this. Check it out. You need a ball underneath this diagram. Well, no, you do not. There is never a ball drawn underneath a measurement to a GP because it's a flat Earth measurement. It's an angle, not off a curve. The moment you draw it with a curve, what are you going to do? Claim that you've got an extra tangent point to it? Why aren't you just using the curve? Because you're not using a curve. The GP will be on this line. That's what you add in, the sphere bit below the line, that's not used in any way, shape or form. Certainly not used to acquire the angle. Can't be. That's where this actually fails, on the first hurdle. Because the measurements they're talking about in the further slides are all in relation to this. 90 degree at the GP, flat plane between you and the item you're measuring in the sky. That's a angle that requires a plane. Not it can't work on a plane. No, it can only work on a plane.
Well, if you could just get over that flat plane that we both require to talk about this subject, I can tell you how it's spherical.
Black market elevation angle measurements are available. Just hit me up on Patreon on the lowdown. Just say, give me an angle, taken from a flat plane. So I can use it on a sphere. I just don't want anyone to know where I got it from.
Look, angles aren't applicable to the ground of a sphere.
Nathan, I got some more slides up there if you want, just to wrap up before the show. So you see the one with the DIY to the right side? It says Zenith Horizon, shows 4 quadrants. Or we can start the show.
I didn't mean to jump in front of your tent, but I was like, what are we in kindergarten now with these guys?
Yeah, well, we are. I mean, see, when they say we need a horizontal, I agree with them. Now you can do that with an artificial horizon to your eye line, but it must be parallel to the one at C when you do dip and you use the actual horizon. That instrument can't work 2 different ways when it always needs a horizontal to work. They're just validating the Earth is flat when they say I could use a bubble sextant, or I could take a protractor and tie a plumb bob to it and find my vertical. They're just agreeing with us. Because, yeah, that's the idea of an artificial horizon, to match the actual horizon. That's why it's artificial, because it's not the actual. But when you do the actual, you do dip correction, which is height of eye above sea level. And there's your right angle triangle, the 90 you need. It doesn't say you need a curving baseline, because then you wouldn't have a right angle triangle, or your 90. And why do you minus from 90 anyway? Because it's a right angle triangle. These people are stupid. They're stupid.
It wouldn't be a 90, like you said, with the curved baseline. That period.
Well, and the fact that even the way they show it, they must subtract from 90 tells you what? That it's not their model doesn't work by subtracting 90. They got curves.
Right. The minute they put 90, like an angle to the GP, and make a, what do they call that? The plumb line, the
vertical.
Yeah, they got another zenith.
Zenith, yeah.
Once they do their zenith, they're done.
Yeah,
That's
well,
this argument is now.
That's right. The diverging zeniths don't work.
It has to be parallel.
No, not
exactly. Don't mention 90.
Took the words out.
Right, the 90 of the zenith is what kills them before they even take the angle, because they want to invoke the zenith now. Well, what are you going to be subtracting that angle you take from? 90?
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Mitchell from Australia, 10th Man, Arwin, Refracted Curvature, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Greetings.
Yo!
Good evening.
Good morning, good evening. Hello. Hello, Discord.
Hey, Nick, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks for asking. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Is that a physical limitation that's set out by some maths? 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height in feet?
That's right, it's the thing they claim boats and stuff fall over at the horizon.
No.
Physical limitation to your view. Yeah.
No, that's been debunked since January 1, 2020.
I know.
Alright.
Boats go over refraction now, eh? Sod all to do with physical limitation. That could be anywhere. I mean, we only have one horizon, and the horizon in the begging the question. Proof of nothing. Perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, claiming to prove where Earth curve is, would put it at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. And what do you know? Black Swan. The distance to that horizon's way beyond the geometric physical limitations that would block boats and buildings. The horizon is not Earth curve.
You know, Nathan, they don't like when you say boats falling over an edge. You know that, right?
I wonder why.
Totally dislike
Yeah, when
that.
they levelled that at us via the Flat Earth Society with a pizza pie Earth and a boat falling over it, what do you know? It's because it's their weakest part of their argument. They've got a boat going over a fraction. I mean, Earth curve. Formerly Earth curve. Before 2020, it was Earth curve that was physically blocking boats and buildings, and you could measure that and quantify it with a photograph that has perspective in it, compared to a non-perspective physical size that's actual only, that doesn't change with distance, and how many feet and inches you're going to miss off the bottom of something when you don't account for angular relationships. Well, that required a physical horizon getting in the way. Well, we debunked that physical horizon, Earth curve edge horizon that's not physical anymore, isn't going to be called Earth curve. Won't be giving you R either. Any evidence of the R value?
Can I use a flat plane to get it?
To get the R value, you will require a flat plane, as Earth is flat, and any measurements you take from the Earth we're standing on will be flat Earth measurements, ipso facto. So, no. That would just be proving a flat plane, would it not?
But yeah. But I mean, after that,
Have the ballers even actually figured out what it would be like to do all these things on a ball? Because they never really seem to get to that point. They always seem to like hide how it's actually tied into a flat plane. But have they ever just honestly tried to do all these things on an actual ball model?
You sound great today, by the way, Arwin. Fantastic mic work.
What?
You sound great. Yesterday you sounded horrendous. Today you sound fantastic.
Ah, okay, cool.
To Arwen's statement there, they always measure it from a flat plane, because even in the celestial navigation books, it's coming from an equatorial plane that's flat. It's never from the surface.
Now, I get that in actual measurements, but have they even like theoretically worked out what it would actually be like doing those things on a ball?
Well, then you would have diverging
They just
zeniths,
seem
and it
to
wouldn't.
suggest
I heard a
they're
yes.
doing that,
I
but
heard
they
a yes
don't
from Mitch.
actually do that.
Hold on. I had a yes from Mitch. And before you go, Mitch,
Yeah,
shout out to Jean has a question, or Jean has a question. How tall is Neil? Does John have his camo hat on? Thank you very much for the super chat. I don't know if you want to answer those before Mitch goes. How tall are you, Neil?
5'6".
Do you have your camo hat on, John?
that is so just prejudicial against Southern people to say that we all wear camo hats and like we're all rednecks. Yes, I do have my camo hat on, yes.
And Italians, because he knows I'm short.
A cotton picking outrage. I'm 18% redneck.
I'm a Southern person, and my neck is thoroughly red.
I have to tell the truth though, because a carpet I had to cut it 5'6" the other day, and when I stood it up, it was slightly taller than me. So I think gravity's pulling me down.
Or
I
you
might
lie
be
about your
shorter.
height. One or the other.
It says it on my license.
Okay, Mitch is waiting. Oh, there's another super chat. Sorry, Mitch. Shout out to Arwin and Flat Earth Early Bird Show. Spanner. Okay. And you too, Nathan. Okay, Paul, thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. And indeed, shout out to Arwin, ARWIJN, and his Flat Earth Early Bird Show that goes out sometimes an hour, sometimes 2 hours before this show. So if you know what time this show's on in your local area, then an hour before, that's when Flat Earth Early Bird runs. So be here or be sphere for Arwin show. Hopefully, Mitch will actually get to respond if he hasn't lost track completely with all the super chats and talk of Neil's height and camo hats.
Yep, it's actually 2 hours before your show, but also an hour before.
Indeed, both are technically true.
So to answer Arwen's question, they actually try to do it on a globe. Yeah, they keep trying to do it on a globe. There was an R claim in the pre-show, which you have to subscribe to Nathan Oakley channel to listen to. But unfortunately, for every time they try to do it on what they think is a globe beneath their feet, they have to keep inserting that damn horizontal baseline underneath their elevation angles. So yeah, they do try to do it, Arwen, but they keep having to have that horizontal baseline.
They have no choice.
Right, so it's never successful then, right? Because you're supposed
it's
to
always
be
successful.
navigating right on that globe, so that doesn't really work out then. Or
Well, it's
does it?
always successful. They're always measuring an elevation angle. They just don't do it on a globe. It just isn't required. The curve of the Earth, the surface just isn't curved. It cannot be.
Yeah, but then now you're talking about the real world again, which they then think is on a globe. But I'm asking, like, have they ever actually tried to simulate on it on an actual globe? How would that work out?
You can't, because you can't get an angle measurement with a curved baseline. So that's why they always do it off of a horizontal plane.
That's why they go to the middle of the Earth, right, Tent?
Yeah, that's all the pictures are down.
But you don't actually do that, though. You'd only do that in the model.
Well, there was a traffic jam about 8 miles down. That's about all.
8 miles?
Yeah, they do it, but they're actually doing it on the surface. They just say they're going to the center of the Earth, cutting the Earth in half and using it as a flat plane.
Nah, I mean, I've said it all along. Black market elevation angles measurements are available. Just hit me up on Patreon. Just don't let anybody else private message me and say, I need an elevation angle measurement to make any globe claim ever. Please, can I have one? Yeah, obviously bung me a $5.
John, you were going to say Rob Durham?
Yeah, Rob Durham, I thought his demonstration of syntax error when he tried to pull a angle from a sphere surface was that was a pretty good attempt. Don't you think?
Absolutely. The CAD program said impossible. You need a straight line. Syntax error. Can't work off a curved baseline.
In that case, right, obviously this presentation that we got in the pre-show from Mitch, it's got a 90-degree marker at the GP on a curved surface. I mean, somebody somewhere has had to draw that in, right? Because no self-respecting CAD program would allow that. Computer says no to this 90-degree off a curve. That's not 90 degrees, lads. Are you dumb? Do you not know what 90 degrees is? Obviously, whoever put this together, is it Wally? Bless his cotton socks. What, Dumbo? This isn't 90 degrees, you Dumbo. Come on the show and we'll educate you about what 90 degrees is, you little sod. Because this isn't it. 90 degrees is not a line that's straight meeting a curved line. You complete buffoons. Yeah, you'll need a flat earth to get that 90 degrees. That's what you'll need. You'll need a straight line here, not a curved line. That won't work. Yeah, what's this, an elevation angle measurement? Oh, yeah, you'll need a flat plane for that. Yeah, your globe's based on them. Moving on. Any evidence you can get an elevation angle from a curved adjacent?
No, it's impossible. I was going to say I added some more slides if you on that point as well as your current question.
Well, after you take the measurement of the flat plane and get the elevation angle. You can do some mathematics incorrectly and make some false assumptions to turn anything into a sphere that's a flat plane.
Wait, who was that guy that said, Nathan, I'll give you the flat plane. I'll give you a flat earth. What was that about that time?
Oh, that
This
was
is way
Conspiracy Cats.
before.
Conspiracy
Go
Cats.
one up. Go one up from the picture of the sextant there to 4 quadrants, Nathan.
Okay.
So, what was the last thing you said, John? That you turned your kitchen into a sphere? How'd you do that?
Well, it's after the measurement, after utilizing the flat plane to get the measurement, all you have to do is misapply mathematics, and you can turn anything into a sphere.
Before you go on, 10th, I want to add something to that, which is to say that we had a guest that came and, taking that principle of acquisition of elevation angle measurements from a flat plane, you can turn Earth, as John has just pointed out, with a few assumptions, into a spherical surface. Obviously, it invalidates the original angle measurement. That goes without saying. But you can do that. But equally, you can turn it into a dodecahedron, or a triangle, or a pyramid, or whatever the guy had in his long list of models you can derive from flat plane elevation angle measurements, right, John? So you can't say, well, that's a valid extrapolation, even though it invalidates the original angle measurement, when you can do it in all sorts of different shapes, right?
Right. You're not dealing with the shape when you're taking the angle measurement. You're dealing with an aspect of the surface. No shape involved in that.
Yeah, but even that guy, he had all the shapes that he could make the Earth, but he wouldn't say what his belief was. I think he still said he believed it was a sphere.
Well, that guy's point was to go for the draw and say, then consensus would rule in the case of the draw. Like, he wasn't wanting to acknowledge I think he even said, well, I'm just not going to change my mind right here.
Yeah, that's what he did. Anyway, the slide you got up right now shows 4 quadrants. This is a circle, not a sphere. And they want you to think it's a sphere. And if you think it's a sphere, then you got to have that tangent plane. And what do you have on that tangent plane? You have a 90, which is impossible on a sphere. So this whole drawing is excusing itself from geometry and angle measurements, except in the Nautical Almanac, all the measurements are derived from the center of the Earth, where if it is a 2-dimensional circle, which it is, you can see it's got 490. There's 490s there, 4 quadrants. And that's why when you take the elevation of a star from a flat plane, because that's the only way you're going to get an elevation angle, you subtract it from 90, leaving you the complement or co-altitude times 60, which is your distance in nautical miles. Always a subtraction from 90. The highest maximum number to subtract is 90. 90 kills them. Next slide. Picture of a sextant showing you exactly on the surface of the Earth how it would work. It shows the sun. It shows the angle of the elevation angle. It shows the complement angle, which would be times the 60 nautical miles. The third slide shows a plane, and it shows basically what you're doing. The sun has a zenith position. Directly under the sun, somewhere on Earth, is the hotspot or the GP, where the sun is directly over. That, to the observer, is the 90. That is part of the elevation angle. The elevation angle does not give you distance. Once you have the elevation angle, you have to subtract from 90 the remaining numbers. The co-altitude, the complement of the angle, is what is times 60 to give you the zenith distance. As you can see, there's a zenith from the sun hitting the Earth, and there's the vertical of the observer, not divergent zeniths. You cannot have celestial navigation work with diverging zeniths. It's in all their pictures. It works this way. Parallel zeniths, flat roof on top, flat baseline on the bottom. Last slide. Last slide shows the celestial sphere, their model of their presupposed globe, and one of the quadrants on the right. And then you see the plane the equatorial plane is kind of on a side angle so that you can get this angle. And there's the altitude, which is the elevation, and there's the co-altitude times 60 to give you the distance in nautical miles. It does not work without a flat plane. You need a horizontal. And let's finally put to rest the eye-line horizontal achieved by an artificial horizon. That is fine. We agree with that. But it must match the Earth's baseline, because in the marine section where you actually aim at the horizon, where you're not using an artificial means to get a flat baseline, you have to do height of eye correction, get your eyeballs on sea level, which means flat Earth. Welcome to Flat Earth.
10th man, you're an assassin, man.
A couple of bits of not exactly housekeeping, because we've got our own specific housekeeping here, but in that regards, Godzilla37 says, if you listen to FED, that's Flat Earth Debate, you'd know bathhouses prove it's flat. But if you listen to the Early Bird show, you'd know bathhouses will help us win the war. Okie dokie. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, Godzilla. Also, with, well, there was a second ago, almost 100 people watching. Thank you very much to all of you who smashed the share button. That's the only reason there's a substantial audience here at all, because people have smashed that share button. If you've just arrived here, thank you very much for joining. A very warm welcome. Please share the show. Any more for any more on equatorial planes?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about Eratosthenes. He didn't make use of a horizon in his measurement. All he used was a flat plane, a stick, and an angle measurement using the shadow or obelisk, whatever it was. The ground underneath had to be flat to get that angle measurement.
Mitchell put up a slide that we've seen. You want to go to that and we can round off this question?
Okay, it's up.
Yeah, as you can see here, they've got a right angle triangle from the sailboat to the zenith of the sun. I mean, look, we're not making this up. This is what they're telling you it has to be. But then they got this dingleberry. You could see that the baseline of the right angle triangle is now a chord going through the Earth. And as Brian has said, if you stretch out that arc above it, you'll never be the same distance. So this is not how it works on a spherical surface. It's impossible. But let's read something here to the very right. Whenever you take a sight of the sun, you are one corner of a large triangle. It's a right triangle. It is completely over and said and done right there, because this is what they're fighting. They want to attribute all of this stuff to FED making up stuff. These are citations. We have references. You just put up your thoughts, your feelings. You never cite anything from celestial navigation. We do all the citations. It embarrasses you, anti-flat earthers. If you go to the section in the middle, now you probably know great circle arcs can be measured in degrees. And it's a happy fact that in this bulgy bottom triangle, is there such a thing as a bulgy bottom triangle? The number of degrees in the arc defined by the bulge is equal to the number of degrees in the angle at its top where the sun is, because this is a right triangle. Who in the world would say a bulgy bottom triangle is a right triangle and you got a minus from 90? These people are not thinking when they're writing.
When he says they got a minus from 90, obviously their nonsense about diverging zeniths is immediately eradicated in that one statement.
Yep. Contradiction. This is what I'm saying. When you read their books, they're trying to sell you the globe version, but all along they have to tell you how it's done, and the contradictions are plentiful. And you just have to have a critical mind and know some basic things to know that you're being lied to here, and that these people have been lied to.
So all along they're telling you it's flat.
Yeah, and they're showing you it's flat.
Shout out to Mike808 for the super chat. Just gives me money. Or you said something too rude that YouTube wouldn't allow to have published. Thank you much, Lee, either way. Really appreciate the support, Mike. Thank you very much for the super chat. Also, another shout out to Godzilla37, who says, see, you'd know what I meant if you'd listened to the Early Bird show. Okay, you catch me out. I didn't watch it today. What do you want? Thank you for the super chat, Godzilla37. I encourage all to watch the Flat Earth Early Bird show, I assure you. Can we move on with housekeeping?
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Move on.
Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Well, you need a container. That's a fact. What's the container? That's up for debate.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No. Well, what did I just hear? Right, I'm busy cleaning. Did Neil just deny a dome?
He said what the container is up for debate. He didn't deny a dome. He's entitled to his belief in the dome.
Correct. And when I say dome, it's to get under Nathan's skin.
No, it isn't. It's because you believe in a dome.
Well, it is a dome.
There you go.
Perfect, Neil.
Totally proved myself right within 10 seconds.
Well,
I just thought all of that was it's finally paid off, and Neil had got it correct, exactly correct, the correct way that prevents any rebuttal, unless you want to attack natural law. Brilliant. So I bothered to jump in, Neil. I was impressed, mate.
Yeah, I'm going to say that. My belief is it's a dome, but in the debate, I'm not going to say that.
Prove your dome.
But we're not
Right.
here to prove beliefs, are we?
No.
Neil can
just,
hold that belief.
Devil's advocate. Just playing the baller that would take advantage of that in a heartbeat.
All right, smash him then.
Prove your dome. What dome? You seen the dome? Where's the edge, Neil? What's it look like? What's it made of? What colour is it?
Beyond Antarctica.
Oh, yeah? When did you go beyond Antarctica, Neil? Who says it's
There's
beyond
an
Antarctica?
ice
Where's
wall
your
there.
documented evidence beyond Antarctica, my ass?
Admiral Byrd.
Admiral Byrd, eh? So when they tell us it's a ball in a sky vacuum, it's all good. Yeah, to just debunk that. But what, you'll cherry pick Admiral Byrd as your citation, will you? All right, I see. Powers that should not be are suddenly the powers that should be when you need to prove a dome. What an outrage.
Listen, there's an ice wall.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
Anthony believes it.
Well, you know, the military is compromised when you make a bird an admiral.
Shout out to Mike808, who says, just support. I come in peace. Thank you very much indeed for the super chats. Really appreciate it.
Well, you know, the dome is another one of those false dichotomies they want to try to pull us in with, because, like Neil says, it's his belief, but we're not here to talk about beliefs. We want to, like to have some evidence, right? So if they can get you to claim a dome, then they can attack that. And it's always better to be attacking the other person's position than defending your own.
Yep, like we discussed yesterday. Better to be attacking the notion of incoherent dielectric acceleration being the cause of obviously everything having a downward bias. Obviously everything's got a downward bias. But let's attack your nonsense about incoherent dielectric acceleration. Right? Because obviously we're going to stack these up as a true dichotomy, and the winner will be gravity. Obviously. All science, hail gravity. Therefore I'll win. Let's not focus on the fact that there is no downward bias to be arguing about, and there is no phenomena. It's admitted by even their own pseudo-science priests. Let's just brush past the fact that there is no gravity to look at and stack it up against something that does actually have effects that we can study.
I remember when Whitsitt debated Brian on this, that he says, no, it's relative density is the highest and most amount of why things happen the way they do. And this thing is very weak and negligible. So why all the attention to something that's so weak and negligible? I mean, that's an admission that they just want to squeeze something in there that doesn't belong in there.
It's been put out for
I
us.
told you, it's not over yet.
It was at the table, at the Feast of Nonsense when we got here at Flat Earth. That's what was on the table for us to scoff down. Right? With all sorts of pseudoscience backing it.
True.
Well, the incoherent dielectric acceleration has some validity to it. Not the downward bias part, but the incoherent dielectric acceleration has validity to it. If, as a heliocentrist, you can get them comparing their valid explanation to your, unicorn farts, you're all of a sudden stealing validity because they're the ones comparing it. So you've snuck something into the conversation that doesn't exist, and you're arguing about which one's a better explanation. It's genius.
Well put. It's genius, and it is fought for by the flat earthers. They really want to be Professor Incoherent Dielectric Acceleration for some reason. And all they're doing is suckling on the same pseudo-science teat that the nonsense heliocentric model's been brought up on. Because they've claimed science with some of these ether drag tests where there is none. It's like you're just falling prey to the same nonsense. If you knew what science was, you'd realise how you were being swindled and swindling people with it. Telling them you got scientific experimentation when you spin a dolly and fire some lights. Total nonsense. It's not science. But they want to claim it as science, so it parallels nicely with the pseudo-science claims of the heliocentrist when there's a discussion going on. Everybody's all under the understanding that as long as we talk about this and we've done a bit of tech, we've got a little contraption to spin, then we're talking science, aren't we, lads? And everybody in the crowd on both sides cheers. Yeah, our science first, your science. And I'd step in and go, excuse me, none of you have got science. And everybody turns around instantly and says, stone him!
Well, if you claim you have science, shouldn't you be able to at least get to the first step?
What, observe a natural phenomena occurring? Gravity doesn't have that. Nicely, concisely rounded up, Neil.
I only joined because I wanted to comment on what John had just said. Just quoting John's words, he said, the incoherent dielectric part has got some validity to it. There is a slither of incoherent dielectric acceleration, but it's not proportionate to mass. And the amount of credibility or validity that we give to the overall claim has to be proportionate to mass. Otherwise, it's not.
What claim? Who's making that claim? Why does it have to be proportional to mass? So it can stack up in a false dichotomy against gravity, Anthony, by any chance?
Well, because if it's not proportionate to mass, then the effect is that negligible that it isn't the little kick that is required to move a locomotive by a baby, for example, because the baby would give the little kick, but the locomotive doesn't move. So that little kick needs to be proportionate to mass for it to represent reality. Otherwise, babies could push locomotives, and that would be the incoherent dielectric acceleration.
Incoherent dielectric acceleration, as a separate subject, where is this quantification with mass required in the descriptions or useful application of that effect? Where is it quantified against mass, and for what purpose? And why is it stacked up against it in our arena?
Mass. It's not quantified against mass.
So the point being, you weren't here yesterday, that the only reason you're suggesting it, what do you know, was right on cue. There's a flat earther talking about a juxtaposition between incoherent dielectric acceleration and something that's got mass associated. Like gravity, you mean?
Yeah. It was at the feast of the nonsense.
So it's stacked up against gravity. You've already disclaimed that there is an effect, regardless of how negligible you want to now decry it as. Well, that's a lot more than you've got with gravity now, isn't it, Anthony? So why the juxtaposition?
I want to attack that, if I can. That claimed effect. They haven't. Tony disclaimed it. There's a correlation, and a very poor correlation at that. There's no cause and effect here. Yeah, we've just got a very poor correlation between mass and this effect. But it's not a direct. It's not a direct effect. You can't demonstrate the effect. All you can show is, with numbers, a correlation.
Yeah, there's a claim that there is a flow of energy from the sky. Well, that's a claim that we don't actually see. So you're giving it more credit than what it's actually should be given, because we don't see any evidence of a flow of energy from the sky.
Right, so there, stop, everyone stop. Stop, everyone stop. Hello, stop 1 second. That's where the parallel comes then, John. We were trying to figure this out yesterday. I'm just glad that you two have got there so quickly. Thank you. So the downward flow of energy from the sky is stacked up against the downward vector of 9.8 meters per second, making everything with a downward bias. So that's where the parallel comes from. That's where it's been interjected. why we have to argue about no, the reason gas goes down, go boom, boom, because we're all going to assume mass goes down, go boom, boom, is because of the energy flowing from the sky, making gas go down, go boom, boom. Again, enter Nathan. Hello? Gas doesn't go down, go boom, boom for either of you? Stone him!
Right, but there is an incoherent dielectric acceleration. It just moves to whichever area has less potential. You know, it's not necessarily down. It's not necessarily up. It's not necessarily sideways. It's just, you know, it's
This
moving.
That's another mismatch. Now we're mixing static electricity and how it discharges with no direction, just based on ease of route. We're conflating that now with this statement of incoherent dielectric acceleration, which is still to be demonstrated and used, but we're conflating these known terms, which have no bias, or if anything, demonstrate the complete opposite of a bias. They'll discharge anyway, as long as it's the most energetically favourable. And we're comparing this again and trying to link it to gravity. But some of these things exist, some of these things are demonstrable, but none of them have any direct link. And fundamentally, as I say with statics, they deny there is up and down, because their discharge pattern is based nothing to do with up and down. It's to do with shortest energetic route to discharge.
Just one clarification. Right. When you say we are doing this, connecting it to gravity, no, Adam, you are far too kind to take such nonsense on your shoulders. No, when we in the pre-show talked about one of them, they do it, don't they? We don't do that, Anthony. Well, Anthony did it earlier, but we'll brush past that and we'll presume he's playing devil's advocate.
Yes. It's trying to understand what's being presented to is all I'm picking through there. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm trying to comprehend what the claim is. Because like I said, the claim fundamentally is based in statements of fact, but joining them together to make to be honest, an incoherent claim. Because the statements of fact don't link to what your claim is.
I know how to end this. I know how to end this whole thing. Somebody's got to wax the wheeler guy.
No. But the thing is about the static discharge, you know, those are demonstrable effects. Nothing about gravity is demonstrable. But if you can get someone to compare those demonstrable effects to gravity, then the heliocentrist has already won.
Meanwhile, when asked, what is gravity? Response, we have no idea. Next question.
Right. It can be anything for them as long as it's a downward acceleration. That's all they're looking for.
And for the normies that might be listening, that's Neil deGrasse Tyson, who says, we have no idea. Okay, next question. When asked, what is gravity?
Right, so it's very useful to have somebody else on the opponent's side also claiming something going down, in this case energy transfer, to compare and contrast with their nonsense assertion of a downward bias with 9.8 meters per second being the accelerative force that they apply to it, i.e. gravity. Well, when they've got their claim and you've got your claim, then you can have a nice false dichotomy set up.
Yep. Right. And Neil, so you know, that's a separate response from the same guy.
I got you.
Well, what gravity is how you stick to a ball. That's what it is in pretty much everyone's mind. It's what allows you to live on a ball. So whether it's the bending of space-time, a force, or an incoherent dielectric acceleration, as long as you're sticking to that ball, you've already lost.
That's correct. But they teach it in school. Come on. That's what keeps us grounded.
But no scientific evidence for anything we just talked about for the last 5-10 minutes?
No.
That's true.
Hell no. A good segue maybe to move on. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Nothing there, but just to reiterate Mitchell's point, that's what I'm kind of making with regards to the correlations. This is not science. We're happy to discuss it, you're happy to look at these things, but We can't state science. There's no science being presented. I said that there's no cause and effect. All we have to view data-wise is some correlation between mass and the downward acceleration that's being claimed. That is not science, is it? We don't have a hypothesis, we don't have independent variables, we don't know what we're going to manipulate to even elucidate the effect. All we've got is looking at stuff and taking numbers from it, and then ascribing a cause based on other statements of fact. But we're not testing no hypothesis here, are we?
What is mass anyway?
Nathan, you want to play a fun quote? It's in Master B.
I don't think we have an effect, Adam. I don't think things go down, I think things go in all directions depending on, the density relative to the medium they're in.
Science, we always say that you make observations, you have a theory, you go make more observations, and it's a very, very tedious process. Wrong. Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method. In our field, it's by the seat of your pants. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork. It's guesswork. It's guesswork.
Very good.
Yeah, but didn't somebody come on and say that that was just a part of what he was talking about? I'm not remembering correctly. That's not, I think it was, what's his name? The guy in Extremistus. Did he say that's not the right quote?
Do we need Extremistus to explain to us what the man just said in plain English?
Yeah, we played his words verbatim as he said them. It can't get any clearer. Nobody in my field uses the scientific method. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork. I mean, how much more clear do you want to be?
Why would you?
I mean, of course, if there's a baller in here that wants to tell us exactly what he meant, even though we heard exactly what he meant, you can do that if you want.
He's got a PhD, hasn't he, Chocolate, this guy? Can he not describe what he wants accurately? I mean, I listened to that, I heard it, I think I understood it because it was in plain English. It was quite clear what he was making, and unless they're insinuating that this PhD dude can't express how he thinks and what he's thinking and how he actually conducts his daily work, that's what you've got to deny, is the plain English there, to try and give some apologetics for that. It's quite clear.
You have to, right? Because it's a devastating statement, especially when you're saying you're talking about science, and you've got here one of the premier quote unquote scientists of the world telling you nobody in my field even uses the scientific method. So would that be science without the scientific method?
Wait, how does he say it? He says uses, understands. What did he say? What did he stop saying?
That is.
Yeah. He was going to say understand, then he said that he stopped and said uses. Nathan, play it again. Play it again.
Science, we always say that you make observations, you have a theory, you go make more observations, and it's a very, very tedious process. Wrong. Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method. In our field, it's by the seat of your pants. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork. It's guesswork. It's guesswork.
See, he said nobody he knows. He must know a lot of people.
I bet he does. Shout out to Central Coast.
I bet you.
He also said in our field.
Just one sec. Shout out to Central Goat. He says bendy water because bendy space-time. No. Thank you for the super chat, but no, bending geodesics in space-time aren't necessarily the same as their assertion that we do have a physical sphere Earth beneath our feet bending away from us at 8 inches per mile squared. Geodesics in space-time are different. But thank you for the super chat all the same. Really appreciate the support. Central Goat, by the way, is the guy that did the flyers.
What a guy. I like him.
Greatest of all time. So he said in our field. What field is he in, Chocolate?
I believe he's a theoretical physicist.
Astrophysicist, right? Huh? Guesswork, leaps of logic. Is that it's come down to? You can use your imagination. What if you had a spicy food the day before? What would you say the next day?
And he said nobody in his field. Wow, that's a lot of people.
Seat of the pants. My goodness.
Fetch me my silk toilet paper.
I think we can expand that when he says nobody in my field. I think we can expand that legitimately to nobody in the heliocentric field either does scientific method. They all fly by the seat of the pants.
Well, he is a heliocentric priest.
That's what I was getting at. He knows a lot of people, so they're all a bunch of pseudoscientists.
Yeah, but when you say he is a heliocentric priest, who is it we're talking about here?
Yukaku.
So when he says that, I think the context in which he's saying that is probably in either the field of astrophysics or theoretical physics, and he'll distance himself from this heliocentric narrative because he doesn't want to be in that field when he says that. So he'll just move the goalpost so he fits in a different field.
Maybe.
But remember, this is the same guy that in another quote described science, saying usually in science, if we're off by a factor of 2 or a factor of 10, we call that horrible. We say something's wrong with the theory. We're off by a factor of 10. But in cosmology, if we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120. That is 1 with 120 zeros after it. This is the largest mismatch between theory and experiment in the history of science.
That statement demonstrates that he doesn't understand what science is, because in science you can't be off by a factor, right? It's binary. If A, then B, that's a 1. If A, not B, that's a 0. And upon experimentation, you get a 1 or a 0 result at the end. And only a 1 or a 0. That's all you can get, and what you will get a 1 or a 0 at the end of a properly devised and properly implemented experiment. You get a 1 or you get a 0. So him saying, if you're off by a factor of what, it was almost very nearly the cause, you complete clown. No, definitely not. Either it causes the effect or it doesn't cause the effect. Very much a binary outcome. Off by a factor, slap, slap, slap. You don't understand science, Michikaku.
Well, he did state that he didn't use the scientific method. So
yeah, but
no. He said in science, if you are off by a factor of
2 or a factor of 10.
Yeah, but he doesn't understand the scientific method.
That's what I just said.
Used it, I believe.
That's what I just said.
But he understands it enough to distinguish it between science and cosmology, right?
No, he doesn't.
So he's telling you basically that the cosmology is not science because it's not experiment.
I think that's the one Extremicist was talking about.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't understand.
Extremicist, bro.
No, when he quantified, like Nathan said, when he quantified that if you're off by a factor of 10 in science, he doesn't know what science is.
It's on the screen,
That's
Master
obvious.
B. It's on the screen, the Master B.
Usually in science, there you go. So he doesn't know what science is. If we are off by a factor of, no, first statement he makes, first words out of his mouth, demonstrate he doesn't understand what science is.
So then he's a pseudoscientist.
Yeah, well, shocking that a pseudoscientist that claims that everyone in his field doesn't use the scientific method wouldn't understand what it even is. Well, why would he need to? He doesn't use it.
That's telling.
Very good.
That's why it's one of my favorite quotes.
Thank you for getting it on screen.
Extremicist, you're probably listening and chat's skanking. Why don't you come on and tell us what you think of this?
I am listening, but not chat skanking.
Did you have any objection?
Okay.
Somebody raised your name saying that you had an objection to one of these quotes. Neil, specifically
my
Neil.
objection was to whoever said, "Who cares about extremists?" That's my objection.
Fair enough. Took me a second to process that. It's very good. Almost 150 people watching. Thank you very much to all of you. Shared the show. If you just joined us, a very warm welcome. Please share the show. Any evidence of the distance to the sun? Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No, that's just on the dingleberry that doesn't exist.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
We'd know it if there was.
Well, that concludes the housekeeping. Jolly good stuff. I've seen several commenters, well, 3, enough to make a comment on it, that have suggested that Brian, in one of his videos, has ascribed a height to the sun. Now, I've watched Brian's videos, and I couldn't figure it out from what the commenters had said. They didn't leave timestamps. Now, Brian's not here at the moment, but it was something I was going to quiz him on. Because I was like, what part of your video are they reading into to make that statement in my comments so overtly and repeatedly? Because I didn't get it from watching his videos, and I watch Brian's videos. So, you know, don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm glued to it 3 inches from the screen. I might be doing something. But by the same token, I didn't pick up on that from Brian's videos. Anybody else a fan of Brian watches?
I know Brian's position on this, and he doesn't assign a height. He says he doesn't know what it is. He just knows it's there, but he doesn't know what the makeup is or the stars or any of that stuff. So he's definitely hasn't done what they claim that he has done. It's just that when he shows parallel zeniths, it doesn't matter what the height is because it has nothing to do with that. And then he contrasts that with their diverging zeniths. They may have tried to obfuscate that point he's making by assigning him something he hasn't said, is my guess.
I think I know where it's coming from, though. It's part of after you measure the flat plane and then you apply geometry, you know? So they're saying that their logical inference is him ascribing a height.
Hold on. Whoa. You're saying their logical inference is that during the process, but the process is celestial navigation and it doesn't utilise the height. So when he's not doing anything, he's just detailing what celestial navigation does, and at no point does it ascribe a height. Yeah, you could use the maths to do that, but Brian's also shown how that wouldn't work as you get further away and it gets lower to the horizon. So no, Brian's definitely not for that.
No, categorically. Over many episodes of Fed, me, Brian, 10th, have sat there and discussed how you cannot assign a height to an apparent position. You don't assign a height when you're doing celestial navigation. It's these relationships. I mean, you don't have to have the height. You get the information, the side length, from the sky. And that's why you're doing celestial navigation, not basic trig, which is what they're trying to force and strawman onto Brian. But I think we've all been very, very, very clear. There is no height. No height is ever calculated. And there's no need to.
But that's right, whistling. Is it not just me seeing it as a whistle past the graveyard, considering that we're discussing angles that can only be taken from a plane?
Exactly. That's the part they don't want to discuss. But yeah, they're using, then after they whistle past that, then they're taking, like Adam said, a misinterpretation and then drawing an inference from that to say that he's ascribing a height when he's not.
We have a correction. QE said Kaku is a theoretical physicist, not an astrophysicist. There is a difference in the war room.
Yeah, I think, who was it that was nodding along? John realised that but just didn't want to correct. Who was it, Neil? I lost track of who made those statements. Yeah, you just said it wrong. He's a theoretical physicist as opposed to, what did you say he was?
The physicist. That's the admission in his statement. He's stating that him and all his peers who ascribe to be theoretical physicists do not use the scientific method. It's a quite honest, clear, and true statement. He's been
You're
totally
right.
frank with everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
You
not
can't use the scientific method in astrophysics. It's a housekeeping question.
I know, but it's not an excuse. It's not a reasonable statement, because in the statement, right, he's saying theoretical physicist. Okay, well, both of those words have got really strong implications about what the meaning of those words. What's physics? Well, it's the study of the physical and natural world. That's natural science, isn't it? So he's got physical in his title. Okay, what about theory? Well, theory comes after experiment, doesn't it? Well, so theoretical sort of sounds kind of very sciencey, doesn't it? But yeah, you're disclaiming that the two words that are absolutely tied implicitly to the science of the scientific method are going to be your title that doesn't use it. It's like, what? Yeah, you're just a magician then, aren't you? And you've used some words from this other field to make your magic sound more legit than it really is. Theoretical physics. Well, that would be, in my mind, if you're talking about science, which you're definitely not, and disclaiming the fact that you're not, like it's an excuse, that would mean theoretical, the part that comes after experiment, and physics, the study of the physical and natural world. He's not doing any of it. How dare you give himself that title?
Can I say something?
I've got the dictionary definition, which will help.
Oh,
theoretical. Concerned with or involving the theory of a subject or an area of study rather than its practical application, in brackets, a theoretical physicist. Google just smashed them.
Yeah, but that theory, but that's the colloquial use of the word theory. I have a theory about how this occurred, Watson. That's a colloquial theory. However, contextually, when he makes his justification, it's in the brackets of science, isn't it? His justification's talking about it in that context. So he's not talking colloquially.
I think he makes, because the dictionary definition absolves him of any responsibility. Look, it's the last bit. Look, concerned with involving the theory of the subject or area of study rather than its practical application. That's physics, practical application.
I was going to say, then it's an oxymoron. So his title's an oxymoron. The not really looking at the physical, the ethereal study of the physical. What?
Remember, at the beginning of the quote, he's stating he's comparing science, right? So he's saying it's usually in science, it's you make observations, you got theory, and then more observations, and it's a very tedious process. Well, what did he leave out of there? How did he go from observation to theory? What there's certain parts he left out of there, right?
What, hypothesis construction and hypothesis actualization? Yeah, he left those bits out, didn't he?
Ding. Exactly.
What's his definition of science?
Can I say something?
Oh, we got some rumblings from Discord, I think. Who was that?
I'm just wondering what his definition of science is. Like, how do we know what science he's referring to? Because there's multiple definitions, right? I know the one we're talking about.
Well, he pigeonholes himself by saying physics or physicist. So immediately it's contextualise it around the physical, because that's what that defines. So it's the theoretical physical. His title's an oxymoron.
Correct.
He also claimed experiment. He also claimed experiments and how they don't.
That's in the other quote.
I would like to say something.
Me too, Neil. Me too.
Okay, Neil, then Eli, go ahead.
I'm going to be real quick. Instead of chat skanking, QE, if we're doing something wrong, come in and tell us.
Whatever. Go ahead, Eli.
What's the difference?
Difference between what and what?
That's what we're talking about. John said there's a difference between theoretical physics and astrophysics. Explain to the audience what the difference is.
Oh, yeah.
Theoretical physics, I'll tell you, theoretical physics doesn't necessarily have to deal with the heavens.
There you go. The astro bit makes it much more specific then.
Okay.
Because obviously you need to be more specific than the non-physical physical that you're studying if you're a theoretical, hypothetical, ethereal, dealing with the physical when you're not dealing with the physical, because obviously that makes total sense.
Right. Well, Michio Kaku deals in string theory, and that's multiverse kind of nonsense. So he specializes in that nonsense instead of astrophysics, which deals in a second law of thermodynamics violation nonsense.
Oh, his nonsense is different. Oh, my bad. Different breed of nonsense.
That's why I've always said he spins a yarn.
Yeah, it's just a different kind of. It's like the difference between reading a book on Narnia and reading a book on, like Star Wars. You know,
some places
fiction.
They'd string you up for a pun like
that. Yes, but I'd be still hanging in there when they do.
Should string you up.
Give them enough rope. No, I mean, we're not going to wrap it up in cotton wool. At the end of the day, he is just a pseudoscientist.
Did you see him get triggered? Did you see him get triggered on that one interview where he was challenged on something that I believe related to his field, and he took liberty to say, "So are you one of those 9/11 deniers? Are you one of those conspirators?" And he just switched the subject to make that guy look like a conspiracy theorist because he didn't want to answer the question. He totally got triggered.
If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hit the PayPal link and all that good stuff. Also, a massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
And by this person's question, you know?
Indeed.
If you have truth on your side, and that's what, you know, that's supposed to be the authority of truth, right? That's what we base our ideas of competency hierarchies on, right? Is that the truth? Well, what's it say if your whole field is built on a lie? There's no competency hierarchy. That, you know, everything falls apart, and he was feeling that at that moment.
Yeah,
there's a lot to lose. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that's why he responded that way, and most people on this show do the same thing when they're cornered, and instead of conceding or saying, I'll have to investigate that more, you got me there. Just something honest, something to where he's not really killed yet, but he's going to be at least honest and not go crazy. What do? They go crazy and change the subject. Oh, you're one of those people. Oh, please answer my question.
Speaking of those people, if anyone wants to go chat skank fishing, it looks like there's a fair few fundies in the chat.
Yeah, they're too scared to actually speak to you, so they just catcall you from the sideline, you know?
I'm just saying, this is the time, right at the beginning of the after show, not when it's 2 hours in and I'm about to round out. And they're all fresh from the live show. Fresh with enthusiasm to debunk our claims that you can get 90 degree from a curved baseline.
You think I could draw them out if I give them a false dichotomy to attack? That seems to be the best way to get them to come out.
What the heck do you mean round out? It's Friday. We ain't gonna have flat earth debate till Monday. Stick around a little longer.
Okay.
Well, I'm just going to say Nathan's getting older. He needs his rest now, Neil. He's getting older. He might not be able to do those 4-hour Fundy bashings like he used to.
Yes, thank you.
On that note, I'll catch you guys. So have
See
a
you
good
later,
weekend.
Mitch.
It's only 1 a.m. here. I have to get some beauty sleep. See you guys.
See you later, Mitch. Thanks for the presentation.
Bye.
Did I miss anything? I've not been listening for the last 15 minutes.
We identified the false dichotomy of incoherent dielectric acceleration with its energy going to the ground versus gas go down, go boom, boom with a 9.8 meters per second vector bias towards the ground. So how those two get stacked up and how it's useful for a globe Earth with no claim, no effect, no phenomena, to stack it up in false dichotomy against a natural phenomena that doesn't have any relation to it. It's not justifying an effect that occurs. There's no downward bias.
So are you saying that the incoherent dielectric acceleration is being compared wrongly with gas molecules go down, go boom, boom, to give it a what? Just to confuse the fuck out of everyone, isn't it?
Well, no, we're the ones pointing out that gas doesn't go down, go boom, boom. That the assertion in the first instance with the claim of gravity fails for that reason. But if instead we find ourselves defending the notions of incoherent dielectric acceleration, and they're fighting for gravity on the other side of the argument, then you find yourself defending a claim that has no relevance to the subject, but lends validity to your opponent's subject because they haven't got a phenomena to show.
Yeah,
That's
nonsense.
Right.
Why do they say why would anyone say that gas goes down? What's because it has weight? Why do they say that?
Because they need it to be a fluid.
Because they don't have a container.
They need it to go down to explain the gradient. Because if they can have more concentration of gas at the surface level and ignore the fact that that's caused by the biogeochemical cycle, they can then say, well, look, there is more pressure at the ground. What causes that pressure? Completely ignore that it's caused by the creation of the gas at the ground level and insist that it's a force that pulls it down. So gas molecules got to go down on their model, because if it goes freely expanding in all available directions, then there can't be a gradient.
It's not an if. It's not if gas goes freely moving in all directions. Just rephrase that slightly. Gas moves freely in all directions, which violates their model completely. Therefore, they need to say gas goes down, go boom, boom, which it doesn't.
What did I get wrong then?
Right, because the gradient is like, again, we have that. What's that got to do with gas going down? Like,
Well, because if they say if gas
I could apply that to. I'm going somewhere.
If gas is pooling at the surface level on a ball with the gravity, then hey presto, we've got a gradient. But gas doesn't do that.
I think he's going somewhere with that, only because he specifically said that. But go on, Eli.
Yeah, well, westfield.ma.edu. And I was looking for this for a while, and I just ran across it. In an insulated container, gases do not slow down and eventually condense. Elastic collisions in parentheses. The gas molecules do not interact with each other except for colliding with each other. Gases expand to completely fill a container. They would not if they were attracted to each other.
Perfect. I mean, that's fairly standard stuff, but standard stuff that debunks the heliocentric model.
Well, technically, I think that it all comes down to they just need gases to be a fluid, so they don't have to be reminded about gas behavior. Then they don't have to address gas expanding in all directions to fill the available volume anymore, because there is no such thing anymore in that model where it's just a fluid, so they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah,
Problem solved.
Right, it's a liquid going down because it's got weight and it's forming layers, even though none of those things are happening.
Haven't you guys ever looked through a telescope? You can see the burning ball of gas we call the sun.
Not with my telescope, not if I wanted to keep my eyeballs.
That's just what Thunderfoot said.
Someone used that as an argument. They said, "What do you
Thunderfoot.
think the sun is, you moron?"
Yeah, Thunderfoot. He just looked at the sky vacuum and said, "Look, it's a sky vacuum." And check out the second law of thermodynamics violation: burning ball of gas in a sky vacuum. Why? Because I say so.
I seen him.
If he was here, he'd have the rendition of, how can you prove the sky is a vacuum? And please don't point to your fundamentalist religious belief in a sky vacuum as an evidence of it being a sky vacuum. Enter Thunderfoot. Well, look, the sky. That proves the sky is a vacuum. Look, it's a vacuum and the gas isn't filling it. It's like, what? No, if it was a vacuum, the gas would be filling it. No, I'm going to appeal to the fact that it is automatically a vacuum because I believe it's so, and the gas isn't filling my fundy belief in a sky vacuum, therefore that's gas pressure without a container. Easy. Gas go down, go boom boom. Check out my bouncy balls.
When he was spouting that...
I have two alternative explanations for what the sun may be, right? It might be the bell at the end of the pointy hat of the leprechaun of the great sky, or it might be the eye of the dragon of the North Sea. How about that? My explanations are more realistic. And probably over history's ages, more people have on average believed in them than the heliocentric bullshit.
Well, when Thunderfoot was given his rendition of what, the sky was and how he had seen stuff from the surface of another planet and all these other things, did you not get the feeling that he had a major God complex when he was talking about those things? Like...
Well, they all get that, right? The atheist wizards that tell us how it all is without God, right? That try to help us with that imagination. Throughout the 20th century especially, they're all like megalomaniacal. They're all feeling like, I am the exalted puppet master. I'm going to steer you around with my brilliance. They all have that.
We've got Danny Faulkner on screen, and we were just talking about Michio Kaku, right? Who would automatically get very defensive if you point out that they don't have the, clout that they're inferring with the terminology they use and the scientific vernacular that they use. They don't have that clout. They don't have empiricism, and therefore what they infer is to be taken with a grain of salt. Well, when they're using words that make you believe that they've proved things empirically, they'd rather that was the case and that remains so. So pointing out the magic trick where they've hijacked empirical methodology of science and implied that what they do when they make up a just so story has that validity, that takes away a lot of their power. Well, yeah, God complex. Well, yeah, he's telling you, the audience, what your world is. Yeah, he fancies himself as a heliocentric priest in the case of Thunderfoot. In the case of Michio Kaku, he is. But ultimately speaking, you can rob their power from them immediately just by demonstrating to them how the words and terminology that they use and hijack actually get applied when studying the physical and natural world. That would be science. They just don't have any. Watch my balls go down in this fish tank.
It's not even that they explain the world to people; they help shape it, right? They realize in that moment that I have an influence of the bigger picture. My idea might rub off to the other gents, and then it might become standardized.
That's right. The paradigm, the worldview, what we dissect down to the model, is reified by the masses. Now, if you have some influence over that version of the reification or its dissemination to the masses, then you have a certain degree of power over them because you're very literally influencing their world in a literal sense. Now, because they don't know that what they picture and imagine to be the world described to them by someone like Thunderfoot isn't actually the world beneath their feet or the one that they experience, is irrelevant. It still makes up what is their world, and he has some degree of control over that. Well, that would be addictive. God complex, yeah, not kidding. They want to change
It
the
is.
world and control
I
it.
know from personal experience through Baldwin, when I still actually believed it, it is literally addictive. But yeah, it all depends on how you see yourself while doing that. I always thought of myself as a benevolent helper, but there are people like, "Mwahahaha, I can doom you, or I can bless you," right? They're more like that.
You verbally described this about 3 years ago, actually, Alwyn, when you were jokingly saying, you know, I've got, you know, I want to get my million or my 5 million or my 15 million euros.
6 million.
Whatever it was. But the point being that you appreciated that there's a certain degree of malleability in the model that's constant, that anybody could potentially influence. I keep saying influence when I mean influence. And you could be that man, right? There's no reason why not, because it's not real. So, you know, if you decide one day that the unicorn horn's yellow rather than ivory, then let it be so if you can convince the masses of that being the case. In this case, it's more pertinent because it's a paradigm, it's a world view. And that world view is reified into a physical existence in the mind's eye of whoever you're telling. So if it's Arwen telling them that, well, actually, the way that gravity works is thus rather than that, and if they understand it and appreciate it and disseminate it to the next man, that makes up their world suddenly as a direct result of mere magic, mere words that Arwen's used. But yeah, Arwen disseminated this 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. It's a big collective dream, and the heliocentrists believe the dream is actually a representation of reality. That's the setup.
AKA reification.
Dream we share.
Yeah, reification.
You do have to be careful, though, because when you realise that say, for example, a theoretical physicist or a cosmologist, when you realise that these aren't scientific terms, you've got to be careful. Because when I did a video once and I got the wrong, which guy was it now?
Foucault.
I can't remember the guy now.
Foucault.
Who was it?
Foucault.
Yeah, it was Foucault. Because I didn't spot that a physicist is different to a philosopher. Because at the time on the week, I didn't spot it, right? But a physicist is generally somebody that's generally empirical, but a philosopher is not. So when I saw the guy Foucault and I didn't realize that he was a physicist, and I was looking for the physicist, I didn't realize that he was a philosopher. I thought they were the same thing. I just, in a moment of drunkenness, I thought that a philosopher was a physicist. I mean, practically, they are the same thing in this topic, but they're not meant to be the same thing. So just be careful with the physicist and the philosopher because they're different. But in this topic, they're essentially the same.
Well, part of the tradition is that it's hidden, right? Heliocentrism is not just a dream. It's suggested to be real. That is accompanied by, we have to keep it hidden that it's actually not real. How do we do that?
What y'all were describing right before this was George Orwell in 1984 when they were explaining to Winston how they can make the stars far away or close. They can, if they have that power, you know.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, pretty remarkable.
Is it not beyond our mathematicians?
And it's so funny because it's already happened, right? Historically, with Copernicus, the distance to the sun changing. So it's even a historical example that's given in the movie, basically.
Well, it's we had someone come here and try to do it when they took flat Earth elevation angle measurements and then showed us how it can work on all these different models mathematically. You know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
you
that's
want a pyramid?
right.
You got
Projections.
it. Globe, no problem. Dodecahedron, you got it. As long as we can take all the original measurements from a flat plane, we can turn it into anything you like.
Any ballers want to tell us about this magical spinning water ball?
So this goes back to when we realised that R only existed in the maths. I'll just put a bit of maths to it and hey presto, we're back on a ball. It's always been that way.
It has. It's surprising we didn't spot it earlier, Anthony. I was feeling embarrassed a couple of days ago when I was laughing along about the fact that, you know, Smokescreen Design is talking about how, look, he just inserts R, but equally you can measure it without inserting R just off a flat plane. So, you know, the two work equally. It's like, no, they don't work equally. The insertion of R depended on making the flat Earth angle measurement first. Why didn't we spot it? Why didn't we see it sooner?
We had that bloke that turned up, didn't we? Baller, that turned up with his multiple models. One was a ball model, 2 different flat Earth, and then the pyramid model. And what I found interesting in that was their admission, basically, that once they've taken all these angles off of a flat plane, you can then import all of these this data into whatever model you want. Even a pyramid, it will work as long as your graph on the ground works with your data. So, like you said, once you've took your angle off of a flat plane, you can bend it into whatever shape you want using mathematics. But it doesn't mean that the shape you make it bears any relation to the reality of the flat plane you took those measurements off.
It's just a skin on a polygon, right? That's basically what it is at the end. It's
Or a
just
skin on a banana. You know, any sort of skin you like, really.
Well, if you don't understand that mathematics is a language, right? It's a way to communicate dynamic concepts. Like, if you can't understand that, then you can fall into mathematics or reality, and you'll accept those things as all being true, you know?
Well, that would be an interesting question for Dielectric, then, who thinks math is reality. So, given that you've measured a flat plane to get the angle, do you appreciate mathematically how inserting an R and bending the ground that you took the angle from is a violation of the angle measurement in the first instance?
Someone should say to Rhetoric, maths isn't reality, we checked.
But it isn't by definition, it's abstract.
I know. We checked.
We don't see much of Rhetoric, though, do we? Not exactly at the tip of this spear anymore.
I think he's being investigated by the FBI, according to stories I'm hearing on the grapevine.
Is that so? For what?
I believe him and Sean Hufford for mass fraud, in it. You know, for those GoFundMes. Apparently, they took something like $250,000 in GoFundMe money for different things. Apparently,
what?
Yeah, that's why none of them are around anymore. No Reds, no Sean.
What's wrong with that? I mean, that's a lot of money, but so what?
That's the story that they're being investigated, and that's why they're keeping low heads.
There must be more
if you
to
look
it
on
than
Red's
that.
channel now,
No,
you look on Red's channel now, there's nothing on there about anything other than space.
Hold on. Would it be MI6 or the tax office or whoever? Yeah, I've run GoFundMes. Don't get me wrong, I've not earned 250 grand. But regardless of what the amount is, it's not really relevant. So have I. So what? That wouldn't get me investigated for any reason.
Well, it does if it's based on front online. Sean admitted it was based on a lie, wasn't it?
What was based on a lie? The GoFundMe was. So hold on. So the campaign themselves, the reasons for the campaigns weren't true.
Yeah, I think it was something to do with a funeral. I think there was someone died, and he asked for money for a funeral, and the funeral was already paid for, so he didn't need the money, and he spent the money on a house instead, or debts or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, so don't quote me on any of that. I didn't keep up with it, but the general gist of it was that he did a GoFundMe, or there was numerous ones. Someone tallied them all up in a spreadsheet, and there was like 250.
I love it. That's just talking the other day, Anthony. Again, you weren't here, but it was. I think was it you, Neil? I was telling you about why I was 100% squeaky clean with all the donations. So basically, somebody gave me money after the initial amount that I might need, I still don't know, to fix this speaker. So I've ordered the first part, basically. And at that point, I stopped shouting out the GoFundMe campaign, which is still active because I might need to promote it again. But somebody after that got in touch or sent a donation and sent me a nice email. And I sent them a lengthy email back going, at this stage, I don't know if I will or won't need more money for this repair. If I do, obviously, I'm going to be shouting out the campaign. But for the interim, you've given me more than I currently require or may require in the future. I might not require anything else. However, as a result, what I will do, and I have actually did it last night, I'll order a few more diffusers. There's some gaps in my ceiling. I hadn't intended to do this, but, I wanted to go towards the show. She gave me something like 65 quid, which is a chunk. So I wanted to make it clear that as part of the GoFundMe, is like an extra. But she knows exactly what I've spent her money on. In other words, I'm crystal clear about what it's going on, and it's sort of outside the parameters of fixing the speaker at this stage. So I've still spent her money. I've spent it on something for the show. she got back in touch and was like, great, whatever. I think she phrased it something like, whatever makes the show sparkle more, or something like that. In other words, she was pleased with what I'd said. I've reinvested it in the show. That's all people want to hear. There's nothing wrong with that. When I said so what about the GoFundMe, on the basis that what you're asking for is actually true and you do genuinely need the money for it, as opposed to, well, I've already covered that car that I bought, but I'll start a GoFundMe for the car. It's like, what?
Nathan, are you soundproofing or sound treatment afflicted? Because you seem to, like, some people crave cocaine or heroin. You seem to crave soundboards.
I go into the chats for audio geeks, right? So the production YouTube videos, and when I start off in a live stream chat, I'll do like the emoji of a man shivering, and I'll go, has anyone got any bass traps? I need more bass traps. Anyone got any? And then when someone asks me what I'm doing, I'm like, they're like crack. I need more, please, more bass traps.
Nathan secretly grinds up his sound panels and snorts them.
Yeah, smokes them in the corner.
Because it makes a big difference. So audibly, someone else was saying, oh, maybe it's because you're colourblind. Maybe you've got the same thing going on. And you have got very good hearing, actually, Anthony. I must admit, when you came here, you picked up on things that no one else has ever picked up on. I was quite impressed.
Straight away as well.
Immediately, yeah, I was quite impressed. I wasn't expecting it either, so my expectations were low. And Anthony came in, picked something out in the frequency response that I hadn't spotted. And I just did a sweep and went, fucking hell, he's right. At first listen.
It was funny
I didn't spot that.
Obviously,
anyway.
Nathan's quite impressed with this setup, and he's like, yeah, come in, sit down and sit this. And I was like, that sounds shit.
He did not say it sounds shit. He said it's missing a little bit in mid-bass. I was like, I don't think it is. And then I checked and it was. Anyway, the point is, it just makes things clearer. So we were talking the other day about hearing fans, or me getting annoyed because there was a high-pitched whistle that I hadn't picked up on because my tweeter's broken. And that frustrates me because it could be that much better in a listenable experience for the audience if that's not there, or I figure out where it's coming from and stop it. So that's why I want to hear everything as crystal clear as I possibly can when I'm doing the show. That's it all.
When you
back to Sean Hufford. So they're fraudulent GoFundMes that they've been running then, just to round that subject out.
Apparently, and obviously you'll not hear this in the public because they don't want to talk about it in the public, but the word on the street is that all of them are lying low, very low, because they're all being investigated by police, apparently.
Yeah. Declare your taxes. Don't lie about what you're doing your GoFundMes for, and you'll all be super clear. Yeah? Just don't lie, and then you've never got anything to worry about. It's really simple. That's flat earth advice right there.
Well, I would go ahead and tell them something that they could get rich. They could just say that they're starting a GoFundMe to send a flat earther into space. And then they wouldn't, from their perspective, they wouldn't be lying. They believe that the sky is a space for gas to fill.
Somebody's already done that.
Not.
I don't know if this happened before you came along. Someone's already done that with a flight to Antarctica. Did you not know about that?
Great to say.
Well, yeah, right, but that flight actually existed. So what you say is...
Check it out. Check it. So his version of what you've just described was even better, because you, as the flat earther, have just told my audience how that flight is real.
No,
Are you sure it's real?
No, hold on. No, I ain't saying the flight's real. I'm saying
you just said that. Those were your words verbatim.
The flight schedule already existed.
Oh, the
He'd
flight
had nothing
schedule.
to do with that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Like, the flight schedule already existed. So,
but did he not run away with 30K?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. He made out like a bandit.
I think it was 20.
But so what I'm saying is, you could have a constantly running GoFundMe, right, to send people into a place that they'll never go, and just keep racking it in, spend it however you want to. You'll never the means will never exist to send people to Narnia.
No. NASA are doing that, right? But they've covered their bases. So through their compartmentalisation of the staff and the subcontracting of the stuff they produce, I'm sure they funnel off plenty into a little black hole, but there is stuff being done. And the stuff that's being done also has a practical application after the fact. In other words, they will filter down the technology. It's not just a big black hole. So while you say, oh, well, we could just do as NASA do, well, no, you'd have to employ several 100,000 people and a lot of subcontractors and actually produce stuff and have it of benefit to society to a certain degree. You know what I mean?
No, your sole purpose for the GoFundMe is to send a flat earther to space, right? As a baller, you're not lying, right?
Don't give many ideas. If someone runs this GoFundMe and gets rich off it, financially that'll be the last straw for me. If it came from here, if someone actually did it.
Well, I'm just saying it'll never happen. They're never going to go to a place that doesn't exist. So they could sit there and just draw all the money, spend it on whatever they want to, and they'll never be expected to show proof because the proof will never come.
Maybe. Maybe.
You think one day they'll find a way to get into a second law of thermodynamics violation?
I've just told my audience that if you're basically just honest, you generally don't have to worry much about anything like that. Whereas morally, I couldn't entertain the idea. I know we're talking about people that are submoral. Don't give me any ideas.
No. You would have to be a baller to do it morally.
Anti-flat earther, yeah. I agree. Morally, you'd have to be.
But yeah, that's what Greater Sapien should have done. He shouldn't have, something that might be in the realms of possibility. You know what I mean?
But did he just vanish then with 30k? He just disappeared and there was no consequences to that then?
No, he vanished. It was 20k, and he said that he offered anybody and everybody any of their money back, and nobody asked him for anything back. So he took it, and he's laughing all the way to the bank.
Freaking thief! And let me tell you something: you can get to this. You can get to the moon. Why can't you?
That's not thievery. What he did.
Yeah, careful.
He was given money for a purpose that never come about, and nobody asked for their money back. If no one said, "I want my money back," and he refused them, then it's not being a thief.
Come on, he could have gave it back. But why can't we get to the moon?
Nobody asked for it. Hold
on.
on. He's totally in the clear then. Nobody asked for it. That's why nobody's going after him. He's done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Even though we knew that flight had never taken place in the first place.
Do you? Well, that's what he was selling. That's John's point, though, isn't it? That's why I contrasted it with him. You say you knew it'll never happen. Well, that's what you could take to the bank, according to John. The fact that he did doesn't necessarily confirm.
Yeah, there's a guy here.
Go on, sorry.
There's a guy in America that he's been raising funds to build a school for like 10 years. He's raised millions, but he still needs.
It's gonna be some school.
And until someone says, "You shyster, give me my damn money." He didn't do anything wrong because everyone believes the school's still coming. So
I bet it's a Jewish guy.
Outrageous! No, you can't get away with that, Neil.
No,
Why would you be so anti-Semitic? What's your beef, Neil? There's no need for that. I bet it's Jewish.
Rhetoric. Oh, it was just a joke.
It's not a joke. It's just anti-Semitic.
It'll be Red's rhetoric.
Oh, it's better.
Hey, Anthony, in law, what does it mean when a law was passed a year or two before a case that is similar? Do they call that precedent?
No, the passing of a law a year or two before a case isn't precedent. It's just setting up the law, isn't it? The precedent comes from the decision of the case being applied.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So, the decision on an activity a few years prior has set precedents, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so since everyone wants to fool us that we went to the moon with Neil Armstrong, then that has set precedents. And so someone trying to raise money to send a flat earther to the moon, he has precedents, right?
What Mark Sargent should do, he should go to that you know, that big vacuum chamber. He should set up a GoFundMe to pay for the so-called costs, 20 grand or whatever, to evacuate the vacuum chamber so that he can put Neil deGrasse Tyson in it and see whether Neil deGrasse Tyson can survive in an astronaut suit. And then the event will never, ever happen and he can keep the 20 grand.
With that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you, first and foremost, to all of you who support Nathan Oakley 1980 channel and Nathan Oakley channel with your super chats and PayPals, because that is obviously the most important thing to the people on my panel. But I do need them, so thank you very much. I'm actually sincere about that. But obviously, another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in Nathan Oakley or Nathan Oakley 1980 premiering streams for liking, sharing, commenting, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!